I'm Robin Torres, your host. Our guest today is Jeff Lanza, retired FBI agent and now a highly rated keynote presenter about risk management at the personal and corporate level. Jeff Lanza was an FBI agent for over 20 years, and during his tenure, he investigated corruption, corporate fraud, money laundering, computer crime, and organized crime. Mr. Lanza has participated in hundreds of television, radio, and newspaper interviews, including appearances on The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS This Morning, Larry King Live, Hannity and Combs, Fox and Friends, CNN Primetime with Wolf Blazer, and National Public Radio. So I'm extremely happy to have him with us today on Conversations. Hello, Jeff, and thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome, Robin.
I saw your presentation about a month ago on FBI, of course, and I was very, very impressed because it was entertaining and you put a lot of energy into it. So can you tell us what age you were when you decided to become an FBI agent?
Well, thank you for your comments, first of all, and I will tell you, I know the exact age. I was 11. And I know that because in 1968, I was 11 years old, and I was watching a show on TV called The FBI, and it started an actor named Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. And I watched that show as a young kid, and I said, that's what I want to be when I grow up.
And was it the suits, or was it
It was everything. You know, well, first of all, the show was based on real-life FBI stories, as we later learned. But it was just the way they conducted themselves, with such integrity, and they wore these beautiful suits in the show. So I want to wear suits like that. They got to carry guns under those suits, and they solved crimes in an hour. That was a job for me.
Okay, so at the age of 11, you decided that that's what you wanted to do, but that isn't where you started. So tell us about your career prior to becoming an agent.
I got a degree in criminal justice, but I wasn't at that time qualified to become an FBI agent because you have to be at least 23 years old, and you have to have 3 years of work experience. So I met someone who said I should go to graduate school just in case I couldn't become a law enforcement officer or get in the FBI. I have a degree. I wanted to get. He thought I'd get it if I had a degree in business, that would help me, in my career. So I got an MBA, and Xerox recruited me on campus, and I went to work for them for 7 years. The nice thing about working for Xerox is I worked in their computer division, and that gave me a lot of experience with computers that the FBI, that attracted the FBI to me to begin with. So that's what got me in the FBI. If I had not had that experience with Xerox, I probably would not have been hired as an FBI agent.
Okay, so then after working at Xerox, you recruited to be an agent.
Right.
Tell us about the training as an FBI agent.
Right. At that time, it was 1988, and the FBI puts, as it does today, all its new agent hires, through a training program in Quantico, Virginia. At that time, it was 13 weeks, and now it's been increased with a lot more training in different areas. Now it's 21 weeks if someone was going through today. But my program was 13 weeks, and after the training takes place, then you're assigned to a field office, and then you begin your career in that field office, and that's what happened to me.
Who decides what field office you are assigned to?
Actually, at that time, they didn't even give us a choice. I think the joke was that someone was throwing darts at a dartboard back in Washington just to assign people to field offices. They try to match you up with the needs of the office. So if an office needs an agent that has experience in white-collar crime or has been in the white-collar area, maybe they'll send that person there. And that's maybe why they sent me to Kansas City, because they needed some agents to work in the white-collar crime area. They knew I'd work for Xerox, white-collar job. Maybe that was a fit. So I came to Kansas City. Okay.
You had an interesting story at your presentation about going through the office in Washington, D.C., and taking a picture with your family.
Right.
And I thought that picture was very, very funny. So tell us about that.
Well, in the year 2001, I had my kids were very young, and we decided that I wanted to show them a little bit more about what I did. So we took a tour. We were in Washington, D.C., and we took a tour of the FBI building, like the public would, and they learned all about the FBI as an agency. At the end of the tour, because I worked for the FBI, they asked me to come in the back room, and they snapped a picture of myself, my wife, and my kids. And before they did that, they handed my kids the guns that the gangsters used to use, but these old weapons from the 1930s. And my daughter and my sons, my daughter in particular, she struck this pose with this weapon, and it scared me a little bit because she was only 5 at the time, and it reminded me of a picture of of Patty Hearst, which
Okay.
when she was arrested by the FBI, and there were pictures of her at this bank robbery, she looked just like that. And so I was a little bit worried when I look at that picture today. Now she's 15. I said, Angela, you know, one day we're driving to the store. She says, Dad, can we stop at the bank? I said, no, we're not going to the bank anytime soon. But,
Right.
yeah, but anyway, so that was a nice little picture for you know, for prosperity purposes, I guess.
It was a nice picture. I like that. So you're assigned to Kansas City. Let's go back to that.
Right.
What were your first thoughts about Kansas City? Did you know anything about it?
No, not really. I grew up in Connecticut, and I lived in the Midwest. I was in Texas. Well, it's not really the Midwest, but I lived in away from Connecticut for a while. But I had never been to Kansas or Missouri, and certainly not to Kansas City. So when I got assigned there, I didn't know what to expect. I had a little bit of a hint, though, because when I got out of Quantico, as I made my way off the stage and said the graduation ceremonies had taken place, one of the instructors at the FBI Academy, who had been around many years, he was a veteran agent, he said, Jeff, you're going to Kansas City? And I said, yeah. He goes, you're going to love Kansas City. And I didn't know why. I said, why? And I thought he was going to say, well, there's nice people there, good cost of living is low, I don't know. He says, you're going to love Kansas City. I said, why? He said, because they have some great organized crime in Kansas City.
Okay.
So I said, well, and I'm pumped up. I said, yeah, that's a good reason to like a city, because there's organized crime there. You know?
Right.
Well, in our field, it is. But in any case, what he was talking about was probably over by the time I got to Kansas City. So that was my first idea of what it would be like here. But I got to work on a white-collar crime squad, and that was still, I know it doesn't sound exciting, but it was very interesting.
Your first case here, which was extremely interesting and funny.
Yeah, well, one of the first cases I ever worked on was not actually a white-collar crime. So I had a request. An agent came over from our organized crime squad one day and asked me to go on a search warrant. We ended up at a bookie's house. This is way back in 1988, and the bookie is being talked to by the agent, and the phone rings at the bookie's house, and I don't know what to do, and the agent told me to answer it. So I said, okay. I pick up the phone, and people started giving me bets, and they didn't question the fact that I told them my real name. They said, who's this? I said, Jeff. And they didn't say, Jeff who? They didn't say, Jeff, where's the bookie? They just said, Jeff, what's the line on the Chiefs today? And I knew how to read the lines because when I grew up in Connecticut, these guys used to come in my dad's store where he owned a business, this variety store, and these guys used to come in there and talk about gambling. And I used to learn from those guys. I'd hear them talking about gambling, and I'd hear the lingo and the parlance of betting. And so when those guys, when they started betting with me on the phone in 1988, I was able to tell them what the lines were because I knew how to read the lines from way back 15 years prior. So they're betting and betting and betting, and finally one guy calls up and he doesn't know who he's talking to. So he actually questions me. He goes, Jeff who? So I said, it's not an undercover operation. I just say, Jeff with the FBI. And he starts cracking up. He thinks I thought it was going to be click. He's cracking up. And he goes, yeah, Jeff with the FBI. That's funny. Jeff with the FBI. Give me 200 on the Chiefs. Wow. And he continues to bet anyway. Mm-hmm. So that was my first, my day as an FBI bookie. Why don't we just call it that?
Okay. Throughout your career, you've handled many, many cases that have made national attention. Mm-hmm. Two, I believe, were, of course, under your direction.
Right.
The first one, the stolen baby from KU Med Center. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with that?
And I want to make it clear, when you say under my direction, I was in charge of the communication part of the case.
Okay.
My job as a spokesman was to go out there and talk to the press. So the public saw me on TV talking about a case. Okay. Many people thought I was in charge of the case, but there were many, many agents working on it. I really wasn't doing the investigation on that baby case.
Well, thanks for clarifying that.
But the point of the matter is that it was a big communication effort because the baby was taken right out of the mother's room, and we really had no good clues as to who took the baby. This is at Kansas University Hospital in 1998 is when it occurred. And I asked the agent in charge of the case, I said, what can we tell the media about this? And he said, we don't have anything. Don't we have any surveillance video? And he said, yeah, we have a little bit, but it showed the back of two people leaving the hospital from a basement door about the time of the kidnapping, but it didn't show their faces, so it really wasn't that useful. But I gave it to the press anyway, and they put the images on TV. And later that morning, we got a call from another hospital. It was actually North Kansas City Hospital, who said, there was a couple in here last night that looks like those two people that we saw the backs of in your picture, and they were acting real strange. So they pulled their surveillance video from the evening before, and we got faces of the two people in North Kansas City Hospital. So obviously we thought it was connected, and we put that picture out we gave it to the media. They showed it on TV, and then we had several calls about the identity of those people. And it just so happened they were the ones who took the baby, got the baby back to its mother within 23 hours of the kidnapping. So it was a really exciting case.
Now, what federal laws did they break?
They took the baby. Well, basically, a kidnapping is not a federal crime unless you take the victim over state lines. And in this case, they went immediately over state lines because Kansas University Hospital is right on the corner of Kansas and Missouri. It's just right across the street. It sits on State Line Road. So they took the baby, drove their car across into Missouri, and now they have a federal crime that has been committed. And that's what got the FBI involved. Now, we would have worked the case anyway, but it was prosecuted in federal court. And that's the standard is that they took the baby across the state line.
Wow. Okay. The second case was the pharmacist that diluted, I think, cancer patients' drugs.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how was that discovered?
Yeah, again, the case was worked by other agents in the office, and I spoke to the media about it, and there was a lot of publicity about that case. But what happened was a pharmaceutical salesperson had noticed that there was a discrepancy between the amount of drugs that his company was selling to the pharmacist and the amount of drugs that he was administering. It didn't add up, and so the oncologist in this case started to do some checking, and she did a test on some prescriptions that she prescribed to the pharmacist, Robert Courtney, that he prescribed for her patients. And this test revealed that he was diluting the drugs, and in some cases down to 0% of what was supposed to be in there. So people thought they were getting chemotherapy in intravenous injections, and they were getting saline solution. And we knew it was going on based on that test, and it had been going on for a long time, unfortunately.
How long did the FBI actually investigate that case? You know, they had to wait a while to see.
Yeah, well, the investigation took place right away, but it lasted several months because there were literally 98,000 prescriptions that he had diluted over the years. And you know, we made a major media effort, communication to people that might have been affected by this, and we had lots of patients call in, and that was a big undertaking of the FBI to find out who was affected and how their health may have been affected by the dilutions.
Do they know how many exact numbers of patients they do?
Yes. Actually, it was 98,000 prescriptions, but 4,200 patients were affected.
Okay.
So 4,000 patients actually received diluted medication from Courtney over the years. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
When you think about it, and that was really a pharmacist is the last, I think, in our society, the last trusted profession. I mean, you know, there's been ethical issues in almost every profession, but not in pharmacy until this point. And so it was a really big deal.
That was a real shocker, I think, for a lot of, most everybody. It was just a
shocker.
shocker.
You trust your pharmacist.
Right.
You trust that they're going to give you the medication that's been prescribed. Yes, it's a big deal.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
And my interests are animals, and more specifically, cats. Now, my husband and I have been rescuing cats for more than 20 years, and that's how we have received all of our animals. We have never actually gone out and bought a cat. They usually come to us from out of the woods. I actually found one in the engine of my car coming home from Johnson County Community College one day, and one in a tree. They just seem to know we're cat people, and they show up at our door. Well, one of our most recent cats, his name is Mr. Cat, and he's a big Mancoon. He has orange and white hair and is long, and just one of those big cats that's about the size of a small dog. He's a really cool cat and very, very sweet. Mr. Cat, the first time he showed up, he had a collar. That's how we know his name is Mr. Cat. And he had a family and an address and a phone number. Well, we called Mr. Cat's family, and nobody came to get him. It was very cold out. The next time we saw Mr. Cat, he no longer had a collar. And so my husband and I drove around the corner to, find his family, and they had moved. Well, the sad part about it is that, in today's economy, lots of people are losing their jobs, they're moving. or for whatever reason, they often think that a domestic animal can take care of itself, and so they will put them out and think, oh, the cat will be fine. Well, domestic animals really can't take care of themselves. And so, of course, we ended up taking Mr. Cat in. And as sweet as he is, it was real obvious that somebody loved him a lot. And so it was very sad that they just left him.
Hi, we're back with Jeff Lanza, retired FBI agent. I wanted to back up a little bit on the stolen baby. I know we discussed that before break. You recently actually had a surprise at your retirement. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I have to back up a little bit. So the baby was taken from the hospital in 1998. 1 year later, in 1999, we had a birthday party for the baby. And the baby was brought in, baby Carly, by her mother, and the media was invited, and we showed, the agents came in and got to see the fruits of their labor from 1 year earlier. And the Kansas City Star had snapped a picture of me holding the baby on its birthday, baby Carly, and that picture appeared in the newspaper. Well, now fast forward another 10 years, 9 years from that date, 10 years from the kidnapping. I was getting ready to retire. A Kansas City Star reporter did a little piece about my retirement and asked me, what's the most important case that you worked on? And I said, well, without doubt, it was the baby Carly case, and we got a baby back that was kidnapped. And so when the story ran about my retirement, they actually showed that picture that had been taken 9 years ago of me holding the baby. It's me holding the baby up like this, and the baby's making a funny face. And so the mom sees the picture in the paper, baby Carly's mom, the next day, and calls me up. She says, Jeff, you're retiring. I would love to have baby Carly. She's not a baby anymore. She's 10. Come in and meet you and meet, because I've told her about the case and I've showed her newspaper clippings. I said, yeah, have her come in and we'll meet all the other agents too that worked on the case. So we had another party for baby Carly.
Okay.
And that was a nice thing because she came in and she was 10 years old and she was in 4th grade at the time. And a really great kid. Her mom said she was doing very well in school, and we had a couple more pictures taken. And as I walked them to the door to escort them out of the FBI, I gave them a hug, and her and her sister and her mom, and I thought this was a nice capstone to my career. The fact that I was involved in that case and able to return her to her mother, and now we have, the girl just to see her again after all these years. It was really nice.
I bet that was. Yeah. You carried a special badge throughout your career.
Right.
That was connected back to or linked back to 1933.
Right.
Give us a little background on that story.
Well, I had no idea this was the case, but in 1990, now I'm in the Bureau at that time for 2 years, I got a call from the FBI in Washington, D.C., and there was someone in an office back there that was doing research on historic FBI badges. And he called me up and he said, you have a very historic badge. And I said, what do you mean? He says, there's a guy that was in the Union Station massacre named Frank Smith. He was the only agent that wasn't killed or actually wounded in that case, in that incident, which was really the beginning of the FBI. It was the threshold, watershed event that changed the FBI in history. But anyway, so he said, you've got a badge that's carried by Frank Smith, and I said, why is that the case? So because we get our badges, when we retire, we keep our badges. He says, back then they didn't, because they gave them back. So when agents retired in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they returned their badge. And so they were then issued, to save money, they were issued to new agents as they entered. So over the years, it ended up coming into my, being assigned to me. And so that was the badge. And since now we get to keep our badges, I brought that badge into my retirement. It's a very significant badge. It was carried by Frank Smith right after the Union Station massacre. He got that badge. Yeah.
Wow. That is impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
And so how did you feel after that? I mean,
I had now, at that point I learned about this connection I had to a very significant event. It was very unique. Nothing I did, by coincidence, but I felt pretty proud to have it.
Okay. I read that you're a certified FBI instructor, and you've developed programs and presented programs all over the country, I guess.
Right.
Things on identity theft and human trafficking. There were two that piqued my interest, and the first one would be on the cyber safety. Right. Cyber safety. Because I'm on Facebook,
right.
I have my pictures up, my kids' pictures, little information about myself. What are some of the dangers or some of the risks that people should be looking out for as far as Facebook, Twitter, those kind of things.
Right. Well, Robin, you and 570 other million people are on Facebook.
Right.
And that's the reason why people are looking at that as a source of information, and also to possibly, you know, sell people products through their Facebook friends. There's two major things that I talk about. Number one, just keep your information as private as possible. Now you're a public figure, you're in television, so it's a little different for you. But for most people, they should only let their friends see their Facebook account, so they can't get this information about them. Sometimes people put too much information on there. They may have cell phone numbers, they may have addresses. They're putting clues on there to passwords, their dog's name, their favorite team. People may think that's a password, they can break into their account. And so just keep information limited, and for a person that are not, people that are not in the public domain, they're not trying to really market themselves, make sure you keep your information protected, especially for kids. That's very, very important. And then also, when you get an email that you have a new Facebook message, make sure you go to the Facebook page directly to log in. If that's a fake email message that's sent out, if you log in through the link, you may actually give a password to a crook, and then he's going to have access to your Facebook page. And if he does that, or she does that, they're going to blast all your friends with some kind of spam message. And
I've had that. I've had a message from a friend,
right,
and it was kind of weird. I mean,
yeah.
I get that from this person all the time, so I'm wondering if someone actually did hack into that person's email account or Facebook account.
That's probably what happened. And then they're trying to get you to respond to some, you know, it might be a product, a drug, you know, a stock, or send money because they need money because they've been, you know, robbed and they have to pay their hotel bill in London. We've seen that happen. So yeah, so just make sure you don't log into those links.
Wow. And the second one would be the senior citizens
Right.
fraud.
Yeah. You know, the thing about the internet today is it really didn't come into mainstream usage until about the mid-1990s. So senior citizens had to learn the internet, whereas our children are growing up in that environment. It becomes natural to them. So for the generation that's had to learn it, some things don't come naturally. And when they get an email from a bank, and they may think it's their own bank, but when they click on that link inside that email, it pulls up a page, they put their information in there, and then they've got their bank. His account can be taken over by the person who sent that email. So never click on those links in emails for asking for personal information.
Okay.
There's lots of scams out there as well. You know, people will send checks and say you've won the lottery. You didn't enter a lottery, but people think they get fooled, and they get a fast-talking person on the phone that says, "Oh yeah, we've picked you, and all you have to do is send money to this address, and we'll send you your $1 million." And most people don't fall for that, but there's a few that do, and that's what we have to really always keep our vigilance up for things like that.
Why are senior citizens such easy targets?
I don't know if they're easy as much as it's just that they don't understand these through the computer, especially how these things happen. They don't understand in many cases that how easy it is to make a fake cashier's check. You know, in the old days, you need a printing press to make a check look real, like Frank Abagnale in the movie Catch Me If You Can. You know,
Okay.
he got printing presses to make checks, and so when a senior citizen gets a realistic looking check in the mail, they think it must be real. They take it to the bank, and the bank says, okay, the money's available to you, but really it's a fake check. And by the time they find out, it's too late. They've already wire transferred the money back to the person to get their additional funds.
Right.
And I think senior citizens just don't know how easy it is to trick people these days with the power of the internet, power of laser printers, and all the things that can be used to trick people.
And also read that sometimes senior citizens are embarrassed to admit to their friends
Right.
or family that
Yeah.
they've been a victim.
And that creates a problem, because when someone gets victimized, they don't want to tell their family about it because they're afraid they're going to ridicule them, or they'll be embarrassed. And the crooks know that. Wherever they are, whether in Nigeria, the United States, in a foreign country, they know that's how they work. They're not going to tell anybody. So then they say, oh yeah, well, yeah, you're going to get your money. You just need to send a little bit more. Now they have them hooked. It's almost like a gambler's mentality. You know, you lose money and then you're going to bet more because you want to get the winnings back, but you don't want to tell anybody about it because you don't want to be perceived as being stupid. Mm-hmm. And so, and I've seen people actually, friends that I have had parents lose lots of money because they didn't tell anybody about it. They didn't want to be embarrassed. And that should never stop anybody from getting help.
Okay. I want to rewind back to Frank Abagnale.
Yeah.
Did he actually, or was he actually invited to become an FBI agent after that case was broken?
Yeah, not an agent. He did. Frank Abagnale was the big time fraud guy back in the early, I think it was in the fifth, 60s, and even in, maybe into the 70s a little bit before he was caught. He actually, because he was so skilled at what he did, had a real talent at it, the FBI asked him to consult and help to investigate check fraud and other things, because he knew how to do it better than anybody. He wasn't an agent, but he did help the FBI.
Wow, that was something that in the movie was awesome.
Right.
Okay, you have a couple of books set to be published. One in particular, I believe you said, will be published in February.
Right.
Pistols to Press.
Right.
Lessons in Communication from My Not-So-Secret Life as an FBI Agent.
Right.
Tell us about that book.
Well, I looked around. I have different topics that I talk about, and I've seen there's been books written on identity theft, and lots of books written on ethics, and lots of books written on other topics I talk about. But there hasn't been too much on how to be a good communicator for an organization. And so I decided to take that one on, and I wrote about basically my experience as a spokesman, and how to deal with the media, how to use certain techniques to get your message across, what to expect when you go in front of the cameras. And there's lots of stories in there about just the time I was on Larry King Live, and the time I had a little bit of an issue with Connie Chung, and my experience on the Wolf Blitzer, and all the local media I talked to as well. And I kind of put that into stories to help illustrate these points. And I was writing a chapter just yesterday. It's almost finished, so hopefully we get that thing to the publisher soon. Okay,
and then you're going to have another one come out, Spokesman?
Yeah.
Is that another book that you
No, actually, that's the one I'm talking about as the spokesman.
Okay, that's
and
the
then
same. Okay.
my next one is probably going to be for kids on cybersecurity and how to keep yourself safe online. But this the main book. I want to get this one done first.
Okay. As you travel across the country doing presentations and seminars, what are some of the main topics that corporations or individuals want to cover?
Right. The main thing I'm hearing from conventions and associations is they have a big need for ethics training. A lot of companies and associations have a requirement, like CPAs, for instance, have to have so many hours of ethics training. Now, I don't go in there and talk about, this is what you do, it's wrong to take a pencil home. That's not the kind of ethics training I do. What I talk about in terms of ethics is how people step over the line, how good people go bad. And I've seen it happen over and over again. And people that go into politics, people that go into corporations, and they start out great, but something happens. And I talk about the factors that affect that, and how people, once they step over that line, find it difficult to get back. And that's the kind of ethics training that I do. And I think it's very useful to people to understand those processes, because if it happens to themselves, they can recognize it before it happens, and maybe prevent themselves or their coworkers from having it happen to them.
Okay. Well, we know that you're in great demand all over the place. Did you decide after retiring to stay in Kansas City?
Right. Well, I have teenagers, and they didn't want to leave, and my wife is actually from the Midwest, so we were very happy in Kansas City. And although I have family back in Connecticut, I decided just to stay here because I'm going to be traveling around anyway, and Kansas City is a pretty central location. Plus, we love it here.
Okay. Last question, and I know that there's a big difference between the CIA and the FBI. Do they ever merge and work together on different things?
They have to work together, and just so people know, the FBI is an agency that has law enforcement powers. We investigate criminal violations of federal law in the United States. The CIA is an intelligence agency that gathers information about other countries and other people outside the United States. And ever since 9/11, the concept of them working together has been very, very important. And they did work together before, but I think now they share information a lot better than they did, because it's a worldwide problem involving terrorism. It's not just in one country or another. And the FBI investigates it here. They investigate it in foreign countries and gather that information. We have to talk to one another, and I'm doing a better job of that.
Thank you for being with us today and giving us insight on the FBI and the special agent keynote speaker all over the country. We wish you much success, and thank you for the information on public awareness.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us on Conversations. We'll see you next time.